results strongly support that these beings are not closely related to any known organism.
I'm about to show you incredible examples of ruins from lost ancient civilizations that are now, somehow, under the ocean. But what is stranger than finding lost ancient cities underwater is the fact that there are so many different examples of them in throughout almost every corner of the Earth's oceans. I mean, whether it's ruins from a lost ancient Egyptian city that was discovered under what is now the Mediterranean Sea, made up of massive statues and stone boxes that were cut with remarkable precision, as well as stone columns and many other things, including even that of a sphinx, have all been found at this impressive site. But why on earth is this ancient Egyptian city now 25 under the ocean and as far away as 7 kilometers or 4.5 miles from the modern-day coastline of Egypt? That's further out than the eye can see, as the average person's ocean horizon from the beach is barely over 3 miles or 5 kilometers away. This site is located off the coast of Alexandria and was once the ancient port city of Heraklion, but is now an archaeological treasure trove of artifacts and stone structures that continues to be excavated to this day. Surveys have revealed 2,500 pieces of stonework and 70 large monolithic blocks, as well as an obelisk, and many broken stone columns and pillars as well. Now, the Mediterranean Sea itself has to be the jackpot for lost ancient underwater ruins, as they've been discovered in so many places throughout this entire region. From off the coastlines of Greece and its islands, to the coast of Italy and other islands throughout the sea, including Sicily, Crete, Malta, and others that are scattered throughout the region. The ocean-battered remains of structures consisting of large cut and stacked stone blocks, but now we can only imagine what places like this looked like before they were consumed and tattered by the sea. In fact, here you can see the added CGI to the crumbled remains of the structure off the island of Crete that paints us a picture and reminds us that these structures once had walls and a roof. There are also many different statues that have been found in places throughout the Mediterranean that were once within courtyards, entrances to businesses, and even inside the living rooms of homes and palaces. The leftover stone dividers that made up courtyards, to even the submerged resting place of a bathhouse, which included extravagant solid stone bathtubs, where people once bathed within the privacy of their cozy estates. Even the preserved remains of a tall stone archway leading through a wall that once led to who knows where, but perhaps a place or path of significance at one point in time. And I have to say that I find images like this one to be so thought-provoking. The incredible architecture and design of artistic tile flooring that was once within the lobby of a building, or perhaps the living room or foyer of some rich ancient person's villa, something tells me that none of the people who once walked upon these various places had any idea that where they were standing would one day be hidden beneath the waves of the ocean. The eerie remains of what were once streets and walking paths, to even the solidified tracks of ancient cart ruts that formed a path where people once traded and traveled through every day of their lives. Of course, not knowing that it would all be submerged among fish and coral reefs for thousands of years until us, their future ancestors, would one day come along with our inconceivably more advanced technology, including cameras, submersibles, even our simple yet highly sophisticated scuba equipment. And here we are now, viewing these sites on YouTube from our phones and computers that are connected to our invisible Wi-Fi. What an amazing time to be alive to see this stuff. And I wasn't kidding when I said that these underwater sites are all over the place. And so far, I've only shared a few of the places scattered throughout the Mediterranean, which I'll be coming back to in a moment to share and discuss more of. But some of the deepest underwater ruins that have been discovered are found all the way over off the coast of India within the Gulf of Cambay. These ancient ruins include cut and stacked stone blocks and other relics, some in the shallows, but many of which were hidden deep under the waves of the ocean for several thousand years. In fact, possibly more than 9,000 years, which, if true, would raise many more questions than we already have about this mysterious site. But one thing that makes it so incredible is that these ruins have been found as far away as 12.5 miles, or 20 kilometers, from what is now the modern-day coastline of India. And get this, at depths of 40 meters, which is 131 feet deep. How and why? Some consider this to be remnants of the ancient civilization of Dwarka, which, according to legend, is the hometown of Lord Krishna, a place that many believe to be just a myth. That was until these ruins were discovered 131 feet below the surface, which, of course, baffled the so-called experts that said it never existed in the first place. However, it's still subject of debate and uncertainty and needs further study. But regardless of who once lived there and when, it's still 12.5 miles from the coast. In other words, this site is 4 times further the distance than the average person's ocean horizon from the beach. And not only that, it's more than 100 feet deeper than the submerged Egyptian city I just showed you moments ago. Even as we go to the other side of the world, to the shallow waters off of the Bahamas, there's a site commonly referred to as Bimini Road off of Bimini Island. Look at these photos and think for yourself. This potential ancient road is now 18 feet or 5.5 meters below the surface, which is shallow enough to free dive. This linear path is a half mile or 0.8 kilometers in length and consists of 3 predominant sizes of blocks. Some as small as 1 to 2 meters or 3 to 7 feet in width. Many others are 10 feet, and the largest grouping of stones are 13 feet or 4 meters wide. This so-called road is of course the subject of debates. However, I suspect that it is indeed the remnants of a lost civilization that existed thousands of years ago when much of the Caribbean was actually land. If these are indeed ancient remnants, then I can only imagine what else is waiting to be found below the shallow blue waters that cover large sand flats throughout the Caribbean. What could be laying just feet below the sandy bottom? But speaking of a debated site, something located not far away is the so-called Cuban underwater city or pyramids. At the dark depths of nearly 2,500 feet deep, or 750 meters down on the ocean floor, and off the west coast of Cuba. This made headlines around the world upon its initial discovery in 2001, but has been seemingly forgotten in the media ever since. Do these sonar images actually depict man-made structures, and if so, how did they get this deep while staying intact enough to be identified? And if these are ancient ruins, how old would they have to be? And could they be in any way connected or related to the pyramid found far away in Mesoamerica? But what you need to know is that this image here was created from this sonar image here. This animated rendition was created on someone's interpretation and may not necessarily be accurate to its true form. What we do know is the last study of this place, at least that is known publicly, was back in 2001. The researchers visited this site twice, the first time when their sonar image was taken, the second when they lowered a submersible down to capture photos. And apparently, these were the best pictures taken, which they claim could be of cut stone blocks that are some 8 feet long, but really, it's hard to tell anything from these blurred photos. It's also worth mentioning that the same people that found the site acknowledge that it may not be man-made at all, and that it needs to be studied further. They're not trying to convince anyone that it's a pyramid or that this site contains cut stone blocks. I mean, I certainly can't tell anything from these images, and I don't find the comparison of the sonar image to the animated one to be similar at all, but then again, sonar imagery is not something that I've ever studied or learned. But it is nearly 2020, so really, we are overdue for someone to obtain new, high-quality camera footage or pictures for additional examination. Definitely leave a comment and share what you think about this site and any other details of it that you may be aware of. But that aside, then take you to the other side of the world, to what has to be the most highly debated underwater site on Earth, known today as the Yonaguni Pyramid or Monument, which is right off the beach of the Japanese island of Yonaguni, which, by the way, is actually closer to Taiwan than it is to Japan. But this structure consists
born in the colony of Atlantis, I remember everything about our mother
of incredible formations that boggle the mind with wonder as to what's possible. Is it natural or is it man-made? And if so, how could it be possible when it reaches depths of 26 meters or 85 feet at its base and 5 meters or 16 feet from the top of the structure from the surface? creating the big question, which is this a nearly 10,000-year-old man-made structure that was later consumed by rising sea levels, or simply a freak anomaly shaped by strong and unusual tidal forces within its vicinity? The first time you see these captivating images, it's hard to think even for a second that this could be 100% natural. I mean, look at those edges. Look at all the different forms and shapes of the rock that seem just too odd to be solely a natural phenomenon. Some even suggest that there is an eroded face carved into a lower corner of the rock, and some suggest that there is an archway made of cut and stacked blocks, also located on the lower part of the formation as well. Puzzling details and images like this really make you wonder how this could be totally natural. The first time I saw this, I thought that there is no way that this could be totally environmental. Why? Well, because just look at it. Since when does nature create straight edges and angles, at least to this size and scale? I mean, why haven't we seen other natural examples comparable to this one elsewhere around the world? However, many experts who I do respect, including Dr. Robert Schoch, who is a geologist at Boston University, has studied this site in person and now argues that it is indeed natural. He even points out that the apparent right angles are not perfect at all when inspected more closely. I have to say that he does make a very persuasive argument that certainly made me doubt the possibility of this being a man-made formation, although I am open-minded to further study and am not ready to completely dismiss the site, but I do have doubts. However, when I see images like this one, I have to ask, how did a strong current create this unique shape, and with the center incision in the middle? How did the current do that in this specific area where there is no apparent rock or land feature blocking the ocean current, thus providing the unique feature that we see now? Even look at this incision, which is only several inches wide, so no, those are not steps, running down a terrace on the structure. How did the current, which is of course coming from the side of the structure, create this on the top, and why don't I see other examples of this occurring naturally around the world? Is it possible that this is a combination of both? Perhaps a long-lost ancient structure that was consumed by the ocean in an area that has very strong and unusual tidal currents? Definitely leave a comment and share what your thoughts are on this one, because this is complicated. Do you think it's man-made? Do you think it's natural, or could it be a combination of both? I'm very eager to read and see what people have to say about this one, but Yonaguni aside, and going back to my point that ancient underwater ruins are all over, let me continue around the world, this time to the Indian Ocean, the island of Sri Lanka, located at the southern tip of India. The submerged Konswaram Temple at Swami Rock was discovered in 1956 by archaeologists while scuba diving. At depths of 50 feet or 15 meters, the site today is highly protected, which is probably why it's hard to find great photos of it. However, you can still see remains of stone blocks, structures, and many different Hindu statues that now lay on the ocean floor, including this creepy-looking head, the leftovers of a bust or statue. Just imagine if you were snorkeling in the ocean and randomly came across this thing. Now, it must be mentioned that much of this sank only a few hundred years ago, but one thing that's interesting is that other parts of it may be much older and could potentially corroborate ancient Indian tales of a land bridge that once connected mainland India to Sri Lanka. That would not surprise me, as satellite images from NASA seem to corroborate it. But as we continue elsewhere around the world, all the way over to Micronesia, which is located in the remote South Pacific Ocean, you can find the ancient and in many ways mysterious relics of Nan Madol, where much of this lost civilization has been swallowed into the shallows. What we see today is simply far different than this engineering marvel would have looked during this civilization's height so long ago, as they used great ingenuity in utilizing these volcanic stones for their structures, and of course not knowing that ocean levels would one day rise and consume their way of life, leaving behind mystery. The question becomes, just how quickly did this happen? However, you can see what the ocean does to ancient constructions, leaving behind nothing more than an unrecognizable heap of broken stones that slowly break down to sand, leaving behind mystery and further questions about lost ancient civilizations in the remote islands of the Pacific. And perhaps nothing is more remote than Easter Island, which of course has the mysterious Moai statues. It's always fun sharing images like this one, as most people have no idea just how massive some of these statues actually are. However, one image that most people have never seen before is this shocking image of a massive Moai statue that is laying on the ocean floor with marine life now growing on it. When I first saw this, I couldn't understand how I've never seen or heard of this inexplicable underwater statue before, which of course could have significant implications to the details that historians thought they knew about the Moai statues, particularly their age. But unfortunately, for barely 10 seconds, as my immediate Google search quickly informed me that this is simply an artificial statue that was a movie prop for some no-name film in the late 1990s. Bummer. But that's how things go on the internet. There are fake things that some try to pass off as real or otherwise exaggerate. Whether it's in various email forwards or social media posts, not everything you see is real. In fact, let me clarify that these images here are not real, and no, those are not underwater columns, and this pyramid is not actually under the ocean. It's simply CGI. But unfortunately, not everyone is aware of that when they see these types of photos make their way across the internet. And that reminds me, if we go to Indonesia and the beautiful water off of Bali, you'll find a submerged temple consisting of Buddhist statues and other relics, all of which are not actually ancient ruins at all, but rather an artificial coral garden that was placed there to facilitate the growth of coral reefs and generate tourism through the creation of a popular new dive spot. Same for the nearby Indonesian island of Gili Meno, where you'll find another coral garden, but this time consisting of 48 life-size statues situated in a circle, all of which were cast from real people. Some have referred to them as hauntingly beautiful. My first impression of this site was, yeah, it's a little bit creepy, but never mind that, as I love the idea of creating coral gardens around the world. But one thing I do wonder about regarding lost civilizations in the Pacific Ocean is that there are different legends describing a continent that once existed throughout a large area of the Pacific, and satellite islands exist today, such as Easter Island, Hawaii, Fiji, and the Samoas, to name a few, are essentially all that's left of this now submerged continent. Could there be any truth to this legend? This will be a topic I revisit in a future video, along with the legend of the lost city of Atlantis that was said to collapse in the waves. But movie props, CGI photos, artificial coral gardens, and legends of sunken continents aside, you want to hear of a place in a country that may surprise you, that has ancient ruins underwater from the largest ancient great city to ever have existed? Russia. That's right.
The results strongly support that these beings are not closely related to.
However, let's not forget that Russia is massive, and I'm not referring to its Pacific coast, but rather the Sea of Azov, which of course was once part of the Mediterranean Sea as a whole, although its waters do still technically connect to it. This is the location of Phanagoria on the Taman Peninsula, which, like I just mentioned, was the largest ancient Greek city to ever exist. Leave a comment if you've never heard of this place before or realized that it's now submerged within Russian waters and beaches, but even Russian President Vladimir Putin has dived this large and impressive site. And here you can see different images of relics that have been found so far. And you can also see other aspects of this lost city that are now buried and being excavated along the shorelines. This is a very interesting site, and who knows what's waiting to be found as excavations still continue to this day, and it's a very large area. But you see, I wasn't joking when I said that the Mediterranean has to be the jackpot for lost ancient underwater ruins. Whether it's lost ruins in the shallows off of Spain near the coastal city of Seville, or on the other side of the Mediterranean off the coast of Turkey and the island of Kokova, this lost ancient Lucian settlement was partly overtaken by the sea due to an earthquake nearly 2,000 years ago. And you can still see the remains of a Byzantine basilica just 20 meters from the shore and 2 meters below the surface. Essentially, what was once the middle of the city is now the coastline. And going south of Turkey, off the coast of Israel, you'll find ancient ruins that date back some 8,500 years, making the site of Atlat Yam extremely old for even the ancients. These ruins range between 8 to 12 meters or 25 to 40 feet under the sea, and underwater excavations have uncovered artifacts and structures that include rectangular houses and even a well. What's crazy is that they believe this was destroyed suddenly, likely due to a 10-story tall tsunami, which was potentially 130 feet high, that followed the collapse of Mount Etna some 8,500 years ago. Just imagine that. Even going back to the coast of North Africa and west of Egypt, Tunisia has remains of incredibly large monoliths, the submerged remains of the Roman Neapolis, which spans an area of 50 acres. An underwater expedition has found streets and monuments, yet little is known about this ancient site. But the point is that something very impressive was once happening here, as these blocks are massive and potentially pre-Roman. But if we go to a more remote area north of Tunisia, there is a massive stone column laying 130 feet down on the seafloor in the Sicilian Channel between Tunisia and Sicily. What's nuts is that researchers believe that it was submerged approximately 9,300 years ago at a time when sea levels were much lower. And by the way, this is the same depth and time frame as the ruins in the Gulf of Cambay off India's coast that I shared earlier. I find this similar time frame and depth below the surface interesting. This 15-ton limestone pillar consists of drilled holes, as you can still see today. The monolith is 12 meters or 39 feet long and is better appreciated in comparison to people scuba diving near it. The remote nature of this find should raise questions to everyone, especially since this thing is on the sea bank 60 kilometers or 37 miles south of Sicily. I mean, really, what is this thing doing here? And if you think that's strange and mysterious, let me remind you of a recent study on the Persian Gulf that I shared in a prior video. This study states that it is incredibly likely that a large ancient civilization lies buried beneath the Persian Gulf today, which is crazy considering it is 290 feet deep under the ocean today. They say it was above land for 100,000 years before being fully submerged around 8,000 years ago. And these pictures are of people scuba diving in the Persian Gulf, but unrelated to anything involving archaeology. But I'm showing you this to get you thinking of what could be laying just meters beneath the Persian Gulf sandy bottom. And this ties into the point of this video, which is essentially a continuation from my two previous videos, which heavily outline the fact that lost ancient civilizations are all over, and in far more places than we thought possible. From the entire Mideast to the Sahara Desert, new discoveries are occurring more and more frequently, and in places that continue to surprise us. Go watch those two prior videos, and when combined with this one, you'll certainly be surprised at how much we don't know about our ancient past and how much is waiting to be discovered. Because mark my words, this is just the beginning of what's waiting to be found within our lifetimes, and the ocean is a whole other frontier. I mean, let's remind ourselves of the awkward fact that we hardly know anything about our own oceans. Even NOAA will tell you, and I quote, that more than 80% of our ocean is unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored. Hell, we haven't even found MH370, that massive Boeing 777 commercial airliner that disappeared closer to 6 years ago now. I've used this example before as it makes an interesting point in that we know what it is and we are actively looking for it, but still haven't found it. Whereas lost ruins hidden now under the ocean are simply not being searched for, like, at all. And here's something that will get you thinking. In 2004, a large ancient forest was discovered 60 feet underwater off the coast of Alabama in what is now the Gulf of Mexico, and has been completely submerged for tens of thousands of years following rising ocean levels at the end of the last ice age. But what's crazy is it wasn't even known to exist until 2004, following the wake of Hurricane Ivan from the year prior, which moved enormous amounts of ocean floor sediment and exposed the remains of this ancient forest. And get this, it was discovered on accident by a fisherman. Perhaps we should start studying the ocean floor following powerful storms, because who knows what is constantly being exposed in one place and buried in another. So the big question many of you probably have right now is, how and why are there so many different ancient ruins found under the ocean? Well, several major underwater sites in the Mediterranean are the result of earthquakes and tsunamis. However, ocean sea levels have been rising for tens of thousands of years and have played the largest role in the depths that these sites are now at. For example, look at this graph of historical sea level rise, and you'll see that at the height of the last ice age, approximately 21,000 years ago, the ocean's sea levels were approximately 425 feet or 130 meters lower than they are today. Think about that. And then notice the sharp increase around 12,000 years ago, which is the result of the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe that I have cited in many past videos. And also note the steady rise in sea levels over the past several thousand years since. Now look at this graph that goes back 450,000 years and shows that there have been 5 interglacial periods, essentially sudden bursts of warming that followed much colder temperatures that facilitate the growth of glaciers and change the climate and weather systems throughout the world. It almost seems to occur on a fairly regular occurrence, as if the Earth is actually a cold place far more than it is a warm one, at least in comparison to today's climate. Like I always say in my videos, research this stuff on your own and think for yourself, but with the data I just mentioned, particularly the ancient shorelines being now more than 400 feet lower than they are today, this can help us to discover more submerged ruins, as we should be searching within the boundaries of known ancient shorelines. You see, that's how there are ruins 12.5 miles off the coast of India and 130 feet deep. The ancients had coastlines that were vastly different than ours are today. This should get us all thinking next time you're at the beach looking out into the ocean. You may find yourself wondering what lies out there past the horizon under the ocean. What's waiting to be found? Are there ancient ruins out there? You may find yourself turning to the person next to you and being like, so I saw this YouTube video with this guy named Jimmy told me. But anyways, this is getting a bit long, but definitely leave a comment and share any other sites that I didn't include in this video, because there are quite a few. In fact, my original goal when making this video was to find every possible site and give all the details about them, until I realized that it was going to be like a 2-hour video, which some of you might want, but it wasn't going to be very boring and just way too much. So I'm going to have to revisit this topic in another video. So leave a comment and share any other sites that I didn't include in this one, and share any other details about these sites that I shared that I didn't include in this video. But anyways, guys, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment. But I'm Jimmy. My channel is called Bright Insight. I have another video coming for you very soon. Take care, everybody.
Beneath the complexities of everyday life, the rules of our universe seem reassuringly simple. This solid bridge supports my weight. The water flowing underneath always goes downhill. And when I throw this stone, it always flies through the air following a predictable path.
But as scientists peer deep into the tiny building blocks of matter, all such certainty vanishes.
The results strongly support that these
What I'm about to show you will likely blow your mind, because by the end of this video, you will have seen overwhelming evidence that a mysteriously long-lost ancient human civilization once spanned virtually our entire planet. And the implications of that are incredible, because it means that what we were taught in school and is still being taught and written about in the textbooks is like really off from what actually occurred in our human history, which is both amazing and exciting when you think about it. Now I'm about to show you more than 250 amazing photos and comparisons of ancient sites from around the world, which none of them seen by themselves prove a widespread global civilization. But when brought together and in comparison of other ancient sites that are oceans apart, it becomes nothing short of actual proof that there really was an ancient global civilization that spanned virtually every continent around the world. And you'll be left with the awkward question, which is, how was I not aware of these details before? Why is nobody in the scientific or academic community talking about this, bringing this information to light? Like, shouldn't this be in the news or something? Because none of what you're about to see is a secret. It's been right in the open for thousands and thousands of years, which is partly what makes it so mind-blowing. The widespread global extent of these similarities are what made my jaw drop, and I'm willing to bet that you'll never see these ancient sites the same way ever again. Now, before I smother you with a couple hundred photos and comparisons, let me first preface this video by pointing out that the Roman Empire is considered to have been the largest and most widespread ancient civilization ever known to have existed, with the Caesars controlling approximately 1 in 4 people on Earth during its height nearly 2,000 years ago. This included most all of modern-day Europe, the Mediterranean, North Africa, and various places throughout the Mideast, a vast area especially for ancient times. I show you this map because for the rest of the video I'm going to show you dozens and dozens of striking similarities from civilizations that are not supposed to have had any contact or connection to each other at all, having been separated by oceans and continents. So with that said, here we go. Perhaps one of the first things that comes to mind when we hear the word ancient ruins are the pyramids, yet many people are not aware that pyramids have been found throughout 5 continents around the world, although most everyone surely is familiar with not only the Egyptian pyramids, but pyramids of Central America as well, along with various pyramids within Southeast Asia and the country of Cambodia. But let me be clear, it is firmly stated and taught in the world of academics, historians, and archaeologists that there is no connection between ancient Egypt, Cambodia, or Central America. In fact, it is considered to be, and I quote, fringe science, pseudo-history, and pseudo-archaeology to suggest that it was possible for these ancient civilizations to have been connected across the oceans and the continents. In fact, there have been many books and scientific journals written expressing just that. But let's take a second to compare the unique similarities between the step pyramids of Egypt, the step pyramids of Central America, and the step pyramids of Southeast Asia. Archaeologists will tell you that the similarity is simply related to the primitive structural design of the pyramids themselves, and that you start with a larger foundation and make each additional layer smaller than the one below it. They go on to explain that this is the most simple structural design possible, and it's just a matter of natural evolution within varying civilizations to come up with this design on their own, again, naturally and organically. I disagree. However, the main supporting argument for this video, but rather a start point. But I have to say that I do not think that these similarities are just a coincidence, especially when you consider them from a side-by-side comparison. Look and think for yourself. Here's what I would argue. We are still a global civilization that is absolutely connected, regardless of country borders and different governments, and in any corner of the earth, in any major city, you will find skyscrapers. And although they're all different from each other, they're still the same exact structural concept, made of steel, concrete, and glass. Different in architecture, yes, but essentially the same nonetheless. In fact, the very first skyscraper started somewhere, which happens to be in Chicago. From there, the concept spread across the world. It is my opinion that the same thing likely happened with the pyramids. And when you see what else I have to share with you in this video, you'll understand why. And like I mentioned a few moments ago, pyramids are found across 5 continents around the world. Most people never knew of is Greece. Look at this here, and although much smaller compared to other pyramids around the world, it is undoubtedly very old and yet very sophisticated, made up of polygonal stones that fit together like a tight-fitted puzzle, requiring no mortar or concrete to hold them together, simply a makeup of intelligent mathematics and precision. And it's clearly been weathered over what appears to be thousands and thousands of years. I wonder how many people watching this video had never seen or heard of this Greek pyramid before, particularly people living outside of Europe and the Mediterranean. Something else that you may not be aware of involving ancient Greece is that they have polygonal stone walls a couple different places around the country. They've survived thousands of years in some of the worst earthquakes in human history. Most people are not aware that Greece has polygonal walls, as you won't find this structure designed in and around Athens where all the other notable ancient Greek ruins are found and visited. And besides that, when we typically think of or hear of ancient polygonal stone walls, the ruins of South America in the country of Peru likely come to mind, which I'll be discussing more of in a moment. But just like the little-known stone walls in certain places in Greece, there are also a few examples in Italy as well. Again, something most people do not realize, as you won't find an abundance of this type of ancient stone structure in and around Rome either. And all the other Roman tourist attractions take attention away, just like in Greece. It's also worth mentioning that there are incredible and massive polygonal stone walls in various places in Turkey as well. Take a look at these and again be reminded of the massive stone walls in Peru. Definitely not exactly the same, but the concept sure is. And it's unbelievably difficult of an undertaking to accomplish. But that aside, and although these are certainly credited to the Greeks and Romans, we have to ask ourselves why we find something so strikingly similar all the way over in Peru. Not only that, we find similar examples within ancient Egypt as well. This raises questions because, as far as we were taught, there can be no possible connection between ancient cultures of South America and Egypt, or to that of Greece and Italy. However, what I'm about to show you next may take you by surprise, as there are several examples of incredible ancient polygonal stone walls all the way over in the island country of Japan. Leave a comment if you are completely unaware of these walls. And like I said, there are a variety of different examples of them, and I'm only showing you a few here in this video. But compared to the stone walls of South America, which, although it's not exactly the same, let me remind you of my skyscraper analogy I gave moments ago. Is this really just a coincidence, or a simple matter of organic human ingenuity within different civilizations that are worlds apart? Well, if that's what you think, wait until what you see next.
When we see Pleiadian shapes, we see a sphere of light because the Merkaba moving so fast. The Atlantean civilization.
This is a stone box sarcophagus found in ancient Japan. Now, compare it to a notable stone sarcophagus that made headlines around the world in 2018 upon its discovery, with the whole world waiting in anticipation for it to be opened so we could see what's inside. I made 2 videos on this if you're interested, but look at the design of the stone lid, and now compare it to the stone lid found in Japan. Both having somewhat of a triangular shape, although not exactly the same. However, now compare the Japanese stone lid to others that are found in ancient Egypt. Wow, this is beyond similar. Look at this and think for yourself. I do not see a coincidence here, I see a connection. An ancient connection that's not supposed to be possible at all. I mean, we're talking Egypt and Japan, worlds apart, especially in ancient times, and of course, according to the textbooks, there is no connection at all. Now, remember the Japanese polygonal stone walls I just shared with you, and let's head all the way to the complete opposite side of the Pacific Ocean to remote Easter Island, which is more than 2,000 miles from nearest point of South America. Of course, you know, when we think of Easter Island, the notable Moai statues are probably the first thing that comes to mind. Many people are surprised when they learn just how massive many of them actually are once they've been dug up and excavated. Just look at that. However, what most of you are likely to find even more surprising is to learn that there is an example of a polygonal stone wall on this island. Take a look at the details of this wall. I myself did not know this existed until creating this video, as it's the Moai statues that get all the attention. Now, compare this wall to a wall all the way over in Peru. Look at these comparisons and tell me that this isn't a total match. The side-by-side comparisons definitely make my eyebrow go up, because the consensus of academic scholars is that there is no connection between Easter Island and Peru. It is also widely accepted that the people of Easter Island came from the Polynesian islands to the west and settled on Easter Island. I do not disagree with that at all. However, let me quickly remind you of something before I show you something else, which is that transoceanic sea travel during this time frame was considered to be impossible, and again, to suggest it is fringe and pseudo-archaeological, like I stated earlier. A comparison to the little-known cloud people statues of Peru. Tell me this isn't unbelievably similar, and again, created at a time when travel between Peru and Easter was not considered a possibility. But that's not all. Compare these statues to others as far away as Turkey and, get this, Indonesia. Although not exactly the same, when you look at the more nuanced details such as hand positions and unique facial and jaw structure, I mean, come on, is this also just coincidence? And then we remind you that the site in Turkey you see here, Göbekli Tepe, is the world's oldest megalithic site on Earth, dating back closer to 12,000 years, and was buried up until excavations began in just the 1990s. Something you'll find at this same site is the specific stone carving of someone holding a handbag. This is a very unique and specific connection that you will also find all the way back in Mesoamerica among the Olmec culture. This is so unbelievably similar, and to think that the bags themselves, stone carving, dates back 6,000 years earlier from our first known documented civilization, which is the Sumerians, which they themselves have depictions holding this bag, and they are 6,000 years older than we are from present day right now. Incredible. How can something so unique be just a coincidence? However, that's what science community of academics and archaeologists say about it. Yet, most people walking around society have never even heard of this before. The authorities in the academic world shun it, yet they never even shared it with you so you could think for yourself. So, what do you think about it, having seen about these handbags for yourself? Is it just a coincidence? Now, speaking of the Sumerians, it's also worth mentioning that they share another similarity to that of ancient Greeks and Hindu gods of ancient India, which is the depiction of the trident. But does this prove a connection? Well, by itself, no. But that is not the only similarity shared between three separate cultures. For example, the caduceus is the symbol showing two snakes intertwined and found throughout the modern world today among the medical and healthcare industries. What most people do not know is that it has been found dating back as far as the ancient Sumerians of 6,000 years ago, like I just mentioned. Well, you may find it interesting to learn that the symbol was also utilized by the ancient Greeks, as well as in ancient India. Again, another interesting and specific coincidence for three separate cultures separated by time and distance. But it does not stop there. Even look at the depiction of a Greek god and Hindu god battling a multi-headed snake. Now that is a very specific and exclusive similarity, but again, by itself, it's not earth-shattering. Although Greece and India are far apart, the ancient borders of the Greek Empire were once not so far away from India during the height of their civilization. But you would think that these interesting details would be shared in school and the textbooks as a possible link, as a vast majority of people out there have never seen or heard of these details before. It seems to me that the ancient Greeks were more connected to India than is currently known or discussed. But let me keep going. I'm sure everybody is familiar with the incredible gold funerary masks of the ancient Egyptians. But what's interesting is that this ties into a similarity of the Inca of Peru and South America. This is an incredibly rare thing as well, as I only found one other culture that, and in only a few cases, also used gold funerary masks, and that was the Greeks, but only in the latter part of their civilization. And, you know, I have to say, isn't it amazing that the Egyptians were by far the best, the most highly skilled and sophisticated makers of these gold masks in comparison? And they did so thousands of years prior to the Inca or the Greeks. And speaking of gold masks, notice the depiction of a cobra snake at the forehead, something you'll also see on countless stone statues of pharaohs within ancient Egypt. Well, now take a look at how the cobra snake was depicted above the heads of ancient Hindu gods. Here you can see just a few examples. And although not exactly the same, this is without a doubt a specific similarity. I mean, why would anyone think to depict this, a cobra snake at the head? Of course, you can read the explanations provided by scholars, which is not consequential to this video, but rather the similarity itself is the significance, because there is absolutely no known acknowledged connection between ancient Egypt and ancient India. But let me keep going. Now, take a look at these examples of stone nubs on ancient sites in India. Many of you may have already heard me and others share examples of these unique stone nubs that are found in Peru and Egypt. Here are some examples found at Egyptian sites, including even that of Pyramid in Giza, as well as at the Osirian as well, and this is just to show you a few examples. Now, let me show you a few examples found in Peru, which there are many examples at various sites throughout this country, and let me point out real quick that I do not know the purpose of these nubs. But it is fair to say that it's not related to moving or lifting these stones as you would first think, because most of the stone blocks do not have them. Only some of them do. Plus, These nubs are found on various bedrock stones, which obviously had no intention of being moved or lifted. Here are just a few examples to share what I mean by that. So, whatever their purpose was, it's not important to the point that I'm trying to make, although it's a fun discussion for another video. The point I'm making here is to show you the widespread global nature of these nubs. And let me say this real quick, that even if the purpose of these stone nubs involved moving or lifting the stones themselves, then I would argue that it's even more supportive evidence of a widespread global connection. I mean, we have different ways of moving and lifting stones today, and we are a global civilization that pretty much uses the same exact technology, right? So if there was some sort of purposeful stone mark on any stone that we're moving or lifting, that would be because we're using the same technology to do so. So if we find these stone nubs across the world, as you're about to see, then you could argue that it's more supportive evidence that the ancients had a widespread global connection. But getting back to the widespread phenomena of the nubs, here are a few additional examples at various sites in India. And again, notice that they're on some, but not all of the stones. I'll be curious to see comments of how many people that were already aware of these nubs in Egypt and Peru, who were only just now learning of these nubs being in India as well. Leave a comment if you are. But here's where it becomes even more provoking, as these nubs are at sites all over the world. For example, even at an ancient quarry in China. I'd be curious to know if there are other examples found at ancient sites in China, which is not easy to learn as many sites are closed off to the public. Lame, right? But you'll even find an example of nubs in Japan, which is interesting when you consider what I already pointed out involving the polygonal stone walls within Japan as well, and especially the comparison of the stone sarcophagus to the ones found in Egypt. But even if we head to the remote Micronesian island of Palau, where there is at least one example of nubs on another sarcophagus, I'd be curious if there were other examples that existed on the island, which I bet if there's one, there's more. Even as we head west to the islands of Indonesia, where I already shared the fascinating similarity between the Moai statues of Easter Island, Peru, and Turkey, well, you will also see examples of nubs here as well, and if you look closely, you will see more than just a few that grab your eye when you first see the image. But I really wasn't kidding when I said that these nubs are all over. Even if we head back to Africa, to the country of Ethiopia, you can see nubs on a stone sarcophagus there as well. And if we head to the neighboring country of Sudan, to where most people don't even realize also has pyramids and of incredible precision, much smaller than those of the pyramids of Giza. But someone please tell me what on earth happened to make half of these just blown up or ripped apart in half. Notice that? What on earth is that about? But if we look closely, and I'm sorry that the pictures are not of the best quality, you'll see nubs in some of the stones, and keep in mind that these stone blocks are much larger than you realize, and so are the nubs. So these are not just blemishes. Hopefully we can get our hands on better photos of these pyramids and other nubs that may be found on them. But even if we head to Europe, you will find examples of nubs in various countries, including Bulgaria, and again, notice that the nubs are on some but not all of the stone blocks, as well, like I mentioned, at other locations. But we can even find examples of nubs in Syria, again, on some blocks, but most are without them. And if we head to Greece, there are a couple locations that have them as well. Interesting, though, that we don't find these nubs in Athens, at least from what I saw, and if they certainly are not in abundance on the most popular ancient sites we normally see from the ancient Greeks and the tourist attractions that are there in Athens. Even if we head to the Italian island of Sardinia, which is in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, there are examples of nubs there as well. Same thing if we head to Turkey, where you can find an abundance of nub examples at various sites throughout the country, but for brevity of this video, I'll show just a few to display the connection. But let me interject real quick here, since I just mentioned that there are nubs found in Italy and in Greece and elsewhere around the Mediterranean, because some people might jump to the conclusion that, hey, wait a second, this is just a matter of the Greeks or the Romans, but that can't be the case, because as we know, there are nubs in Japan, there are nubs in Peru, there's nubs in Indonesia and elsewhere. So if that were the case, that it was just simply, oh, a Roman or a Greek thing, then why do we not see more examples of these, one, within their capitals all over the place, within the notable tourist attractions that we always see and hear about, as well as the fact we'd have to say, hey, were the Romans or the Greeks capable of traversing the ocean at vast distances? Because that would completely contradict what we learned in school as well, and what the scientific community say is even possible. So, something to think about. So with that said, it seems to me that at a minimum, based on what we've seen so far, the widespread nature of these ancient nub phenomena and these other aspects we've shared so far in the video, that at a minimum it shows that regardless the ages of these things or who made them, that at a minimum there's far more to the story of what we thought we knew about our ancient past as it is. Regardless of the age or who did it, there's clearly something more that we don't know about. Now let me keep going because I have more to share.
EVE Online is a vast universe, alive with the unrelenting activity and combined history of its players, pursuing lives of adventure, warfare, and prosperity.
So, in previous videos, I've shared unique comparisons between angled structures of ancient sites in Peru to that of Egypt, and these are just a couple examples. Now, I've also shared examples of that of trapezoidal doorways. So let's head back to ancient sites within India. Look at this here, cut out of solid stone. Make no mistake, these symmetrical angles would have made the construction far more difficult to do compared to a straight line. And I'll give further supporting evidence of that in a second, but look at these various different trapezoidal doorways first. Now, let's head to the opposite side of the world, again to South America. Let's first notice the cutout itself, which is not exactly the same as in India, but similar and with big precision, and equally difficult to accomplish. Now, look at just a couple examples of trapezoidal doorways in various places throughout Peru. Of course, not exactly the same as within India, as these sites in Peru utilize separate stones rather than just one solid stone cutout. But to emphasize my point that the trapezoidal design is far more difficult than straight lines, you have to appreciate that it would be far easier to cut a bunch of square or rectangular stone blocks of the same exact dimensions and then stack them upon each other into the design of a doorway. But when going the route of a trapezoidal design, each layer of block is a different shape than that of the one above or below it in order to achieve symmetrical angle. That right there is next level difficulty. Now, again, this is not exactly the same as in India, but let me remind you again of the example involving skyscrapers across the world. All different types of architecture, none are the same, but they're still essentially the same thing, just different. It's worth mentioning that these are not the only examples of trapezoidal doors you'll find around the world, though. In fact, a certain place in Italy has trapezoid doors, and this feature can even be found in ancient Egypt as well. Isn't that interesting? And real quick, the site here in Italy is in Lazio, and it was a tomb. Take a look at a few different photos here. Observe not just the shape of the doorway, but also the windows. And notice that it has false windows as well. Now let's compare that to Peru, and tell me that this isn't incredibly similar. In fact, when you compare how there are sites that have both real and false windows, and of the same unique trapezoidal shape, and in combination of the other same style trapezoidal doorways also found in Peru as we just shared, this should make you wonder. But again, none of these details seen by themselves prove a global connection. You have to look at everything from the whole. Now, I had a career as a corporate fraud investigator where I would investigate employees that were suspected of stealing and defrauding the company. And gather evidence and build a case that would eventually lead to an arrest and prosecution. And what I can tell you is that in the court of law, regardless of the crime, that if you don't have, caught red-handed on videotape or something of the crime, what you do is you build up a bunch of points of evidence, line items of evidence. At this place, at this time, and you gather, and eventually all those lines of evidence lead to what's considered proof and will lead to a conviction. So let me ask you this. When you look at all the information that I've shared in this video, all the physical evidence, the details, is it really just a coincidence? Or when you piece it all together and you look at all the information together as opposed to individually, because you could write anything up. Oh, a trapezoidal door, it's possible that's just a coincidence. The trident, coincidence. All of this could be just a coincidence and inconsequential when you look at it by itself. But when you bring it all together, does this not amount to actual proof that clearly there's far more going on in our ancient past than what we ever thought? I mean, let's review real quick. We have gold funerary masks among 3 separate and far apart cultures that are supposed to have no connection to each other at all. We have depictions of cobra snakes at the head of 2 different cultures, along with depictions of the caduceus among 3 different cultures, along with depictions of the tridents among those cultures, depictions of handbags etched in stone, separated by, in some cases, tens of thousands of years when you consider Göbekli Tepe to the connection of the Olmecs in Mesoamerica. I mean, really, is that detail just a coincidence? How specific can we get? We also have the creepy similarity of the Moai statues to others in Peru, Turkey, and Indonesia. We also have a bizarre similarity between Egypt and Japan when you consider that stone box sarcophagus and how similar they both look, and having had no connection between those 2 cultures that were a world apart. We also have polygonal stone blocks found throughout the world, ranging from Easter Island, Peru, Egypt, Japan, and throughout the Mediterranean. And we also have the stone nub phenomena that are found across the world, including, again, Japan, Micronesia, Indonesia, Egypt, Peru, and again throughout Africa and Europe. Consider all of that, and now take a second look at the similarities between the pyramids of Egypt, Cambodia, and Central America. Do these side-by-side comparisons really suggest a simple and natural evolution of structural design that are totally organic and natural within itself? Or is it when you study the specific and truly unique aspects, and in combination with everything else shared in this video, does it seem to be more than just a coincidence? Academics profusely reject an ancient global connection or civilization of any kind, and they ridicule others that suggest it with essentially name-calling, words like fringe and pseudo. Yet they never actually go through and share all of the details with those who they intend to persuade. Look at all these details that I've shared in this video and think for yourself. And isn't it interesting that none of these things were shared with you in school at all? In fact, only a very small percentage of people have seen some of these details before. Of course, there are ancient history enthusiasts that watch this channel, that are subscribed, there are other YouTubers. I'm not the first to talk about these things. Although I can tell that while researching this topic in the last number of weeks, that many of these things, I was blown away. My jaw dropped at seeing the connections between Japan and Easter Island and elsewhere around the world, that this adds up far more than I thought. I was already suspicious and thought that there was a global civilization. I think a lot of people that watch this channel and are enthusiasts for the topic of lost ancient civilizations, they already knew it. But were they aware of the extent of all of this? I don't think it's a coincidence, but that's not to say that we should just start rewriting the textbooks right this second. But at a minimum, what is necessary is a whole new conversation and debate. And these details should at least be presented to the younger generation that is currently in school now. Because keep in mind, this stuff is shunned, right? Even people that study this stuff are oblivious to a lot of these same little details, right? So with that being said, there's going to be a whole new generation of academic scholars and archaeologists and historians that it would be great for them to be raised with a more open mind. Because what happens is, people are raised into being told one thing, and then they grow up thinking the same thing. And then when they hear something new as an adult, they're like, wait, that's not true. If that was true, I already would have heard about it. But again, it goes back to my point that how many of these details have you never seen or heard of before? And how is it that the people that are saying that, no, it's all fringe, but they're not, when I say they talk about fringe, the things I shared with you, they're not responding to these details. They just say that transoceanic connections was impossible. That only started happening a few hundred years ago, and that's that. You're crazy. You're a pseudo-historian or archaeologist. You're fringe if you thought otherwise. But they don't share with you the same details while trying to persuade you when they say it. Think about that. And let me also say that I'm not necessarily suggesting that every single location was connected to every other single location that I just presented in this video. Let me go back to my example of the skyscrapers, how it originated in Chicago. I am suggesting that in that comparison, that when one thing starts somewhere, it eventually spreads, goes different places. And that's what I think happened in ancient times. And they were far more global than what they get credit for. Now, let me say that there is an abundance of more information that exists that I did not share in this video. involving stone nubs, polygonal blocks, and many other fascinating aspects. My intention in this video was to share the widespread nature. I reached out to a fellow YouTuber named Andrew who runs a channel called Ancient History Criticisms. And he's been cataloging these connections in epic detail, particularly the nubs and other stonework. This guy played a huge part in helping me with this video. I asked him for some help and some insight, and he truly went above and beyond asking anything that I had asked for. He's made dozens of videos that are a gold mine for this ancient connection topic. And look, he is barely over 1,000 subscribers, so hook him up. Go to his channel right now and hit the subscribe button. Make this guy's day. He truly deserves it, and he has so much potential, and he has so much information to share that so many other people should know about. But when you're a small channel, it's hard to get the word out. So follow him on social media as well. He's a smart guy, and he's worthy of your time. So definitely go and subscribe to his channel right now. But anyways, guys, I'm Jimmy. My channel's called Bright Insight. Hit the like button and subscribe, and leave a comment and let me know what your thoughts are on everything that's been discussed. And it's important to acknowledge that I am not the first to be discussing these things. I'd like to think that I shared a number of things that were never shared about from other researchers in the past involving this ancient global connection, but there are many other researchers that have talked about this for decades. And it's important for people to realize that, guys, there's so much waiting to be discovered that's not a secret, and it's hiding in plain sight. So, anyways, I'll leave it at that. I'm Jimmy, this is Bright Insight. Hit the like button, subscribe. My dogs are barking. Take care, everybody.
Shut it in. Okay, how do I even begin this one? The internet has been a very fascinating thing for me in the many years that I've been on it, but one of the most
Yo, what up, guys? Just about to get off. Put another hour in. Wanted to fill in the hands real quick, so I got that done. And so now all the skin tone has a layer of paint on it. So the next time I come in here, I can start working on this shirt. And that's normally how I do it. Try to knock all the skin out first, because the skin tones are normally I use the same set of colors for anybody really, black or white, dark or light skin. So got the first layer there. Like I say, come back and the shirt is blue, so we're hopping some different color blues and fill the shirt in, and then the underpainting will be complete. Hey, yeah, it's looking pretty good. All right, I'm about to get out of here. Appreciate y'all tuning in. See y'all next time.